Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Morgan Hill Real Estate Market Analysis for November of 2022. As usual, what we're going to do is run down all the main numbers for the real estate market here in Morgan Hill to see if we can't get a better idea of where the market might be headed and also to get a calibration of where we are. We all know that over the past few months, things have been changing quite a bit. If you listen to my most recent podcast, I pointed out some of the pitfalls of listening to folks selling you on ideas that the market is at certain price points simply because the market's changing so quickly. You really need to double check those numbers. So make sure to check that out. You can find those at soldbyrobert.com and also on my YouTube channel if you prefer the video version of that. But let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the Morgan Hill numbers here. Now we're going to start with active listings. We can see that in terms of total number of active listings, we've got 65 in November of 2022. Now, for those who aren't really used to the way I do this, this is one chart that gives us two ways to look at the data. One is to compare November of 2022 to November of 2021, and that eliminates seasonal influences, right? Because we want to really compare times that are as similar to each other as possible. So doing that year over year comparison, I think, is one of the more informative ways to see where things are going. Now, what I've done is put both Novembers on the right-hand side here grouped together. So you can see them right next to each other. And the November of 2021 is in red, so that's easy to differentiate between the two. And you can see that from the same time last year, where we have 65 homes in the Morgan Hill inventory right now, last year we had 42 at this time, and that's a 55% increase. The other part of this table that's useful is being able to just look over our shoulder and see all the months leading up to November to see what the trends might be. And we can see we clearly peaked in June of 2022. That makes sense in terms of seasonal influences, right? As people want to put their homes on the market. And then things have been relatively flat through July, August, September, and October, with a little bit more of a drop here in November, which isn't unusual. You can see that while inventories were extremely low a year ago, we did see drops in November, December, which is typical for the Thanksgiving and Christmas seasons as folks want to try to focus more on the holidays. What's going to be interesting in the months as we move ahead is as we move into 2023, we're going to finally start to see numbers where year on year we're comparing properties because remember how hot things were a year ago. Once we get to March and April, things are going to change, and you can see it last year in March and April. That's when we started to see the dramatic increase in total number of active listings. And just to give you some context, right? For a lot of folks, this is just a number without a whole lot of context. If you are a seller, think of this as your competition number. These are the number of homes you're competing against in your local market. If you're a buyer, this is the total inventory of homes you have to choose from. If you go and you do a search on your most interesting areas of Morgan Hill where you want to live, these are the total number of homes that will come up in Morgan Hill for you to consider as your next purchase. We can see, again, flat performance in the past few months, but a change in November downward, and I think we'll see another downward trend just looking at historical data for December. So look for that next month. Next, let's go ahead and look at new listings for November of 2022. These are sellers who decided to sell their home in the month of November. Now, it is normal for this number to go down. Once you get into November, typically sellers will wait until January or February simply because it's holiday season. But if a home does list in November, there's a pretty good chance that these folks may be more motivated. So just note that as you take a look at homes that were listed during the winter months. Now, again, we can see that we have a sharp decline from the same time not last year. Last year, we had 49 homes added to the market in Morgan Hill. In this year of 2022 for November, we had that number at 34. So that was almost a 31% decrease. And again, if we look at the historical data, we can see that leading into summer months boost that we tend to get as sellers want to get on the market and they want to have enough time to get the home sold so that they can move during the summer months, particularly a popular time for families because kids coming and going from school. And then in general, who wants to move in winter, right? So you're typically going to see sellers trying to take advantage of that, not just because their buyers want to move in the summer, but because they want to move in the summer. So that's a normal boost in those summer months. The drop was pretty dramatic after June, though, into July, which is a little interesting. Typically we don't see that big of a drop, but we do tend to see a drop. It's just interesting how quickly that really just took a dump and then stayed relatively low from July all the way to now, and we are at the lowest number aside from December of last year. And it wouldn't surprise me if we end up in December beating last year's December number. So we'll keep an eye out for that number in next month's review. Next, homes sold. Now, these are total number of homes that were sold in the month, but let's keep something in mind. This is lagging data, meaning it's about a month old, because a home that is sold is one where escrow has closed. So this represents a home that closed escrow in the month of November, but the date the contract was agreed on was 30 to 40 days earlier than that, except for those rare occasions perhaps where it was an all-cash purchase and escrow only needed to be a couple of weeks or something along those lines. By and large, this represents contracts that were accepted in October, not November. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go along. And again, the reason why I think it's important to keep that in mind is because we are seeing a pretty dramatic shift in the market on a month-to-month basis in several markets. So being aware of what's happening right now really has never been this important since we had the last big drop in property values. All right, so we had 23 homes sold in November of 2022. We can see that that is substantially lower from the same time last year. Last year, we had 50 homes sold in November of 2021. That's a 54% decrease year over year. And we can see that it's the lowest number of homes sold going all the way back to August of 2021. Dramatic drop from, and you can see, unfortunately, I screwed up those numbers. That red column is supposed to be for November of 2021, not November of 2022. But from October, just from October, it was a huge drop. Last year, if you look at October, there was a drop, but it wasn't quite as dramatic as this. In terms of trends, we've been dropping ever since April of 2022 pretty steadily with a little bit of fluctuation here. These kinds of fluctuations you can sort of normalize in your brain simply because we have a lower sample size in Morgan Hill. So sometimes you'll see odd fluctuations. But the general turn here, the general curve we're seeing is downward. And I think we will continue to see that going through December. And then if we think about January and February, you can see those were also declining months last year. Wouldn't surprise me if we remain relatively flat, and then a big jump in March. So if we look at historical data, we can expect that second month of 2023 to start to see an increase in the total number of homes sold as folks come out. And actually, you know, that time of sales has actually inched up. The peak is in April. And when we used to measure this, when the big numbers come out on when is the best time to sell your home or the best month in which it's most likely to sell, it typically was May and June, but now we've seen it happening earlier. That's a factor of when buyers were super hot to get into the marketplace and started looking earlier in the season. Not sure if that'll carry out this year. Wouldn't surprise me if we see a generally the same trend since so many folks in the market have gotten used to kicking things off in March. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see a much more gentle increase during those times rather than some of the dramatic increases we've seen in the past. Okay, average original list price. Now, original list price is important to note. The reason why we look at this number is to try to get a handle on the mindset of sellers as they're putting their homes on the market. So what this number represents is what sellers agreed to when they listed the home with that real estate agent in their living room. It's not what the home was listed at the time that it sold. So this was that original, wrote it on a piece of paper before it went onto the MLS, before people could see it and visit it and potentially make an offer on it. So this doesn't include any changes to the price after that. So if there was a price change between the day they listed it and the day it actually sold, that's not reflected in this number. We're going to cover something in a minute that takes that into account. But you can see here, compared to last year, on average in November, folks in Morgan Hill expected their homes to sell for 20.5% more than they did last year. In November of 2021, they were selling for $1.3 million. They were listing at $1.3 million. In November of 2022, they were listing for $1.566 million. And if we're really honest, this number has been relatively flat since May. Again, because of sample size, one extremely high-end home could potentially throw this off in terms of original list price. But in general, we could call this a relatively flat change, but with definitely elevated expectations from the same time last year. Next, Average sales price. Now, this is what the home was actually sold for. This is what the offer was. This is what the buyers submitted. This is what the sellers accepted. So this is what it actually sold for. And if we look, we can see that clearly in Morgan Hill, homes were selling for less than what sellers were expecting. So we had 1.296 million in November of 2022, whereas in expectations we had 1,566,000. So on average, we can sort of extrapolate that sellers are a little bit disconnected from what the market will actually bear. Now, this represents a 1.1% increase from the same time last year. So 1,274,000 was the average sales price of a home in Morgan Hill last year. So very close. And we could call that flat. Again, anything within this, say, 2, 3, 4% range, I think it's very reasonable to call that a wash based on, again, low sample size for Morgan Hill. But this is not unusual. We're seeing plenty of areas where the average sales price is actually down from the same time last year. If we compare it to the county at large, average sales price is down 5.2% from the same time last year. And in San Jose, it's down 4%. So still bucking the trend of the county, but at a very flat level. So I would call this relatively a wash. Now, in terms of looking at things historically, we see a little bit of a boost here in October of 2022. That was primarily due to a higher end home that sold during that month. So once we normalize for those kinds of things, it's been a relatively steady decline since June of 2022 in terms of average sales price. Let's go ahead and move on to percent of list price. This represents the sales price compared to the list price at the time the home sold. So we're not comparing this to original list price. This represents trying to get into the mind of buyers, where the buyer was looking at a home on the paper for the MLS that they had from their realtor. They were looking at what the asking price is, and this is what they ended up offering. So in Morgan Hill in November of 2022, we saw asking prices being reduced down to 97.8% of the total list price in terms of what was accepted by sellers when buyers were making offers. So 2.2%, not insubstantial, and we've seen a relatively steady decline ever since March and April, where this number has gone down consistently each month, compared to last year, where that number was at 104.6. So sellers were typically getting 4.6% over what their asking price was, and that is obviously completely switched at this point. And for overall, that's down a 6.5% measurement from the same time last year. Now let's go ahead and take a look at total days on market. We can see there's been a lot of fluctuation here. Again, whenever we see really big jumps in your mind, since we have a small sample size of data for Morgan Hill, it's best to normalize that. So as we see in December of 2021 shows 26 days, clearly a home that had been on the market much longer sold finally in that month. So if we sort of normalize for those bulges, those jumps, big jumps, or even dramatic drops, we can see it's been relatively flat from October all the way till June of 2022. Then we saw a big increase. Now, to explain those previous low numbers, days on market used to be completely artificial, meaning that when a real estate agent would list a home on the market, they would, in the private comments aimed directly at real estate agents that were going to be showing the property, that the sellers were not going to entertain any offers until a certain date and time. That was typically anywhere from 10 days to 16 days from the day the home was put on the market. And that was an opportunity to let plenty of buyers get into the home so that you could build up that buzz, right? Get as many eyes on the property as possible so that you're potentially getting as many offers as possible. Today, as of around July, that's completely changed. That is no longer the case. Now the market is defining when these homes were selling. We can see a dramatic jump from June 20 of 2022 to July of 2022, from 16 days to 35 days. But look at the jump in November of 2022. 36 days to get a home sold in Morgan Hill, compared to 11 days a year ago, for a 227% increase in the total days on market in November of 2022. So definitely having to wait longer. 30 days is, in my mind, that sweet spot. It's a psychological thing for sellers. Once a property has been on the market for 4 weeks, for a month, I think that you start to see a greater number of sellers entertaining the idea of being softer on their price or just going off the market altogether if they have the alternative to do that. But if they must sell, one of the few things they can change is the price. So that tends to be the thing that gets hit, and you'll tend to see price reductions. And we're going to talk about price reductions here in a second. But definitely, sellers are having to wait a lot longer, and this gives buyers psychologically more of an edge as they come in with offers, particularly on properties that have been on the market for a little bit longer. So keep that in mind as you're poking around in the Morgan Hill marketplace. Next, let's go ahead and look at price reductions. You can see that in November of 2022, we had a 28.9, almost 29% of homes had a price reduction in Morgan Hill, compared to the month before, which is 45.5%. So nearly half of homes had a price reduction in October of 2022. And I think this reflects a growing tendency on the part of sellers to understand they're hitting that 30-day mark, or they're hitting that 3-week mark, or perhaps their real estate agent after 2 weeks is having a heart-to-heart saying, listen, we aren't seeing the activity we should be seeing. We need to adjust our price. That is reflected here, I believe, in terms of last month, October, an awful lot of sellers got the memo that the market was changing. And as we move on into more months into this new market, I think we'll see smaller numbers in terms of price reductions because there will be more sellers coming onto the market that are priced correctly. Now, something else that's interesting to note about this, as we did have 28.9% of the total homes on the market in November see a price reduction, if we look at those properties, that comes to an average price reduction of $46,207 for those homes. What's also interesting is these are all homes that have been on the market longer than the average for the month. So clearly these are homes that were priced poorly, and one of them has been priced poorly for a very long time. We've got the number of days on market ranges from a low of 56 to a high of 233. So quite an interesting range there. And then in terms of the dollar amount of reduction, on the low end, we had a $19,500 reduction. On the high end, we had a $100,000 reduction. And that $100,000 reduction was not up in the stratosphere. This was what used to be the average price of a home in Morgan Hill, right around $1 million. So definitely some interesting trends here. Thought you might be interested in knowing how much those reductions are adding up to. So I'll be including those for right now as they're relevant as we move forward with future estimates. All right, folks, I hope that's been valuable information for you. There's nothing more important than really knowing what's going on in a market that you're interested in, taking the pulse of it, so to speak. So hopefully these numbers have given you some insights for you to make better decisions. Now, if you'd like to get in contact with me, the best way to do that is to head on over to soldbyrobert.com. From there, you can send me an email, or you can use my online home valuation tool. It's instant. You simply go in there, you enter your address, and it'll tell you what the estimated value of your home is. And just like I warned at the beginning of today's market analysis, data is quickly becoming less and less relevant as the market shifts so quickly. So I think online estimates are going to be about as inaccurate as they can be right now, because they're simply basing it on numbers that are no longer super valid. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And that's going to be true of all automated online estimations. But you can give this one a try to give yourself a very broad estimate of what your home might be worth. And of course, if you prefer a more exact comparative market analysis, feel free to use the form there to do that. I'm happy to do that for you so you can get a much more precise estimate of your home's value. And of course, if you want to start your search for a home anywhere in Morgan Hill, San Jose, San Martin, Gilroy, whatever, the Silicon Valley area, same site, soldbyrobert.com. I've got a great search tool up there for you to use to find the right home for you. All right, thanks again for listening, everyone. Hope I've left more knowledge on the table than I've taken up in your time. Look forward to seeing you next time.